zingers. Nothing better than an attorney, and you'll need them after the night anyway, Danny. So without further ado, let's start it off with Mr. Alan Bennett.
All right. All right, Danny. I know you get the last word. Couple of things. Whoever wrote this, I'm not sure why it says notable. I understand local, but notable. The other thing I noticed is the picture. You got that picture. Why don't do Facebook? But if you do go on Danny's Facebook page, now, I think that was his, what was those glamour shots? My. Okay, Danny. I know that tonight we're here to roast you. But to do that, I needed some background information. I didn't know you as a child, so I called your mom up. Now, and you won't believe this. You know Danny Day, but his mom said that back then he was a real problem child. In fact, she tried to find somebody to take care of him, but the mafia charged too much money. His son John got curious about their family tree, so he started doing some research. When he finished his research, he decided he needed to cut the tree down. All right, we go back to the picture. Now, probably most of you know that Danny strived and wanted to be a comedian. In fact, the man played Vegas. And here was one of his favorite jokes. He said, "What do cows do for entertainment? They rent movies." That's why Danny's in Kernersville as a funeral director. That comedian thing just didn't work out for him too well. But he never lost his desire to be funny. In fact, be careful. He's been known to put whoopee cushions in the family pews sometimes. All right. One other thing, if you get to know Danny, you know it's kind of hard to hear. He's probably deaf, but he hears what he needs to hear. Now, years ago, before he met Rosette, he's probably never told Rosette this story, but you know, he goes to the doctor. I don't know if it was Charles' record or not, but he went and got a physical. Finished the physical. A week later, the doctor's come down the street and he sees Danny's got this gorgeous young lady on his arm. She says, "Danny, you're doing great." He said, "Yes, I am, Doc." He said, "I took your advice. You told me to go get a hot mama and be cheerful." And he said, "Danny," I said, "you got a heart murmur. Be careful."
That was a good one there.
But, you know, Danny figured out at a very, very early age that he could use his deafness to pick up girls. And as I understand, when he was a teenager, routine went something like this. He'd pick the girl out in the class that he wanted to meet, and he'd go up and he said, "Did you know that the most intelligent boy in our class is deaf?" And she'd go, "Well, that's unfortunate." He'd go, "What'd you say?" Now we'll get on to Rosette. You know that opposites attract, and she is the absolute, complete opposite of Danny. She's good looking, she's intelligent, and she's cultured. All right. If you've been around Danny a little bit, you'll know one other thing. There's times he lacks brain power. But that wasn't really his fault, because when God was handing down intelligence, Danny had an umbrella up. In fact, if you ask Danny a penny for his thoughts, the man will give you change back. I know he's not real slow, but it takes him an hour and a half to watch 60 Minutes. You go figure that one out. He's known to be a little hard-headed, but he does speak his mind, but he's got nothing to lose in that category. But I will tell you one other thing about him. We picked on him about that, But Danny does sometimes give you some good advice. In fact, just the other day in a meeting, he made a very profound statement. He said, never, ever take a sleeping pill and a laxative on the same night. And Danny, we appreciate that advice. Danny does his best not to disappoint people. In fact, as we all know, he strives to be the last person to ever let you down. You thought you'd get by without slowing down. If you ever get a letter from Danny, you'll notice two things about it. He begins every letter, "Dearly beloved," and he ends it, "Eventually yours." Danny, it's been a pleasure, and we enjoy it, and thank you for doing this for Carenet.
Before. Okay. So now you know where I'm going with it. You know that he always has to drive. Have you noticed that? Okay. It's entitled "The Taxi." A passenger in a taxi leaned over to ask the driver a question and tapped him on the shoulder. The driver screamed, lost control of the cab, nearly hit a bus, drove up on the curb, and stopped just inches away from a large plate glass window. For a few moments, everything was silent in the cab. And then the still shaking driver said, "I'm sorry, but you scared the living daylights out of me." The frightened passenger apologized to the driver and said he didn't realize that your tap on the shoulder could frighten him so much. The driver replied, No, I'm sorry. It's entirely my fault. Today's my first day driving a cab. I've been driving a hearse for the past 25 years. Okay, Dan. Without further ado, Senior Vice President, Fidelity Bank, Mr. Bob Reed.
Well, Danny, it's a real honor to be here to share a few things about you with this distinguished group. And to the clergy that are present, I want to go ahead and apologize right off the bat. But I had the opportunity to meet Danny, it's been about 7 years ago. And over that course of time, I've learned a few things about him. And one of them is I need my glasses. Because I want to make sure I get this right. But just a couple things. There are some famous Danny-isms. Got to meet a family. Got a body. I'll drive. Just an idea. Does that make sense? And then there's a couple of words that describe him. Those are controlling, delegator, creative, and perfectionist. So if you can just kind of follow those words there in your mind, I'll tell you a couple stories. And they're going to sort of revolve around golf, also the downtown council as a board member there, and also gadgets. Danny, several years ago, got a new phone, a Droid. And Marie and I were out to dinner with he and Rosette, and he had just got this Droid. And we were enjoying a nice dinner, and we left, and he said, let me tell you about this thing. You can talk in it, and it ask where you want to go, and it'll come right up and give you directions to where you want to go. So he put in a place of business, and we were in High Point. So sure enough, it popped right up there with the directions. Well, for the next 2 hours, we rode around Walgreens, just across the street, because he was looking for it. And it was right there. So the next day, we go play golf, and Danny's got his Droid. And, with this, you can use it as a yardage finder as you're playing golf. And so, I've been playing golf a long time, and we're out there playing, and he said, Bob, you need to know how far you are to the hole. And I said, well, Dan, there's a sprinkler head right here. And he said, no, it's 139. And I said, no, it's 137. So, he kept going on and on about using the droid as a yardage finder. So we finally convinced him that we didn't need that anymore. We could figure out how far we were. A couple of years ago, we started a New Year's Eve gala for the downtown council, and the first couple of years it was in the factory building over here. And first year we went over there, we were in a room that was just totally not fixed up. There was just walls, studs, So we were trying to figure out what to do. And Steve and Mary, who were here, were there with us, and Danny and Rosette and a couple others. And we walked into the room and trying to figure out how we're going to decorate this thing. And Danny says, well, hey, we can do this, we can do this, we need to get this, we got to have this, and all these. He left all these instructions and then said, I got to go meet a family. So he leaves us to stand there and figure it out. And after a while, we finally came up with something. And so about an hour before the party, and we're still rushing around, he comes back, is there anything I can do? I said, no, Danny, we got it squared away. But one, and I know he knows I'm going to tell this story, because he told me I could share it. But before I tell that story, I've got another golf story. And a couple weeks ago, and Danny, we're all sorry about the loss of your sister. But we were at the church, and after the ceremony, we were standing there, and Danny's house was right there next to the church. Beautiful setting, a big pasture across the street, and I asked him, I said, Danny, tell me how to get out there to the church and to your home. And he said, well, the best way is by helicopter. And because it is out in the country, but it's beautiful. So we were standing there talking, and he said he'd been living there since he was 14 years old. And I said, well, Danny, I guess when you were here, you loved to play golf, and you probably stood out here and hit golf balls into the pasture over there. He went, oh, yeah, I used to do that a lot. And he said, I used to have to wait and listen to whether cars were coming by. And I went, oh, really? You were listening for cars? And I said, Danny, there's probably a car hadn't been by here in 3 weeks. And he said, well, then they had to put a sign out there, see the yellow sign that say cattle crossing or whatever, and they had a sign out there of him trying to hit a golf ball across the pasture. But to go back to the KDPDC, or the Downtown Council, we were in the process of hiring an executive director. And 2 years ago, in February, y'all remember February, how cold it was and snowed a lot. But we were in the final interview process. We had 4 candidates to interview. And it was on a Friday morning, and I got up, and it was snowing like crazy. It was coming down. So I called Danny, and I said, Danny, what do you think? You think we ought to cancel the interviews? And he said, he just got his new Cadillac, and he said, look, I can get anywhere in this Cadillac. So I said, well, let's just meet at Fitz, and we'll have breakfast and discuss it. Well, by the time he got to Fitz, he said, we got to cancel this. He said, I almost ran off the road. It was really bad, and I just don't know. So there were several of us there that were going to do the interviews, and we'd gotten there early. So we ate a big breakfast. Huge breakfast. Drank a lot of coffee, and we're eating a lot of stuff. And Rosette, being the person that she is and caring about Danny's health and everything, had really tried to help him with some of the things that as we get older don't come as naturally as they used to. So she gave him this stuff called psyllium husk. And so we ate this huge breakfast. And by that time the snow had let up, and we said, well, maybe we could have these interviews. Dan says, look, I got my phone, We can call these people. All I gotta do is get their address. I can get there. Let's do it. So we say, all right. So we call the candidates, say, hey, look, can you get downtown and get to the meeting? And all of them could except one. So Danny said, I'll go get her. He said, what's your address? She told him. Well, you know, by this time his breakfast had started to settle. The coffee that he had started to settle. The psyllium husk was starting to kick in. And so Danny takes off. Well, we're waiting for him and don't hear anything. So Steve Hutchins is with us. Steve gets a text from Danny. I need help. He goes down this road where this lady lived, and she had told him, she said, there's no way you can get up the road. You can't get up the road. Well, Danny goes, and he's driving, getting up, and all of a sudden, you know how you're driving in your car, you're going up a hill, and all you can see is the hood in the sky. You don't see anything down here. Well, that's the way it was. Danny starts down the hill. He couldn't stop. Went down the hill, right through a guy's yard, tore it all up, stopped about from me to Alvin to running into his gazebo. And then he can't get out. He's stuck. The yard's all tore up. So he's trying to figure out how to get out of there. So he calls Steve to come get him. Well, Steve's got his truck, and he heads out there. Well, in the meantime, the coffee kicks in. So Danny got out of the car and looking around, what do I do? What do I do? Well, you do what you got to do. So, you know how your parents always told you not to eat yellow snow. Nobody wanted to be around there. So here comes Steve. Steve goes down, sure enough, he starts down the hill. He's going in. He's got his truck. He almost ends up into the rear of Danny. But he manages to get out. So by this time, Danny says, I got to call AAA to come get me. Well, the psyllium husk. The big breakfast had kicked in. And he's looking all around, what am I going to do? Well, he did what he had to do. And so, he looked around, he started thinking to himself, you know, my gosh, here I've run into this guy's yard. I have tore it all up. I've made yellow snow. And now I've even done worse than that. So AAA comes and gets him out of there. Well, then he had to call the guy because he had tore up shrubbery. He had, just big ruts all in the yard, just tore it up terribly. But he called him, and that big breakfast, that psyllium husk, cost him about $1,000. But he managed to get it done, and so he came to the meeting finally about 2 hours late, and he walked in and he started telling this story. And I thought I would never laugh as hard as listening to him, because being the comedian that Alan talked about, he really just did a great job. Danny, you're a great guy. And I asked Alan if he was going to say anything serious, and he said he wasn't. But I do have a couple final words that I want to share with you about Danny. And again, I'm going to make sure I get those right. Danny is an individual that is considerate, he's thoughtful, he's caring, he's empathetic, he's sincere, he's loyal, he's trustworthy, and as tremendous amount of integrity. And I thought about these words, and I thought about him, and there was a movie years ago, 1990, called Dances with Wolves. I don't know whether you've ever seen the movie or not, but a great story about a soldier and how he bonds with some Indians. His name was Lieutenant John Dunbar. And one of the Indians nearly had a hard time with him, the Sioux. His name was Wind in His Hair. Well, at the end of the movie, they're going to have to part ways. And Lieutenant Dunbar is going to have to leave the tribe. He ends up marrying one of the Sioux Indians who actually wasn't a Sioux, but was taken in by him. But at the end, they're getting ready to leave. They're on the horses, and all of a sudden, you hear this Indian at the top of his lungs. He's up on a hill, and he's yelling, and he's yelling out. He says, "Do you see that I am your friend?" First of all, he says, "I am wind in his hair. Do you see that I am your friend? Can you see that I will always be your friend? Then you will always be my friend."
When I was asked to do this, all I could think about was, tomorrow's my birthday, and he's giving me my birthday present early. I also, back in the back, somewhere somebody's got them. I have some of these. If everybody, my resume, just come on, have a job. It also says that I have worked for Danny Jefferson, and as you know, that qualifies me to do anything. We at the funeral home have a saying around there. I have it pinned up on my wall in the room. It says, "We the willing, led by the unknowing, are doing the impossible for the ungrateful for so long, we're not qualified to do anything with nothing." It's the great roast master. Jeffrey Ross once said, "We only roast the ones we love." I love my dad. I really like picking on my dad. Everybody's around. We always joke and pick around. I'm looking around at all the roasters tonight, and as I look around, I see people like Bob Reed. He's a banker. Everybody knows he's a banker. I don't trust bankers. They can't seem to count. I mean, they have 11 windows and 3 tellers. And
We're not roasting me. That was a good one.
In Bob's case, they have 1 window, 3 drive-through, 2 drive-through lines, 3 teller windows, and 1 to 4 bankers behind the counter at any given time, so y'all's is worse than anybody. Alan's here tonight. We just heard him speak a minute ago. Y'all know that what they say about lawyers. They're going to spend all the time they can trying to help you get your estate in order, just to take it at the end of the day. And how did I get stuck roasting Dad up here with all these fossils? I feel like any minute the Smithsonian is going to break in the back door and take them back to the exhibit they Seriously, you can't roast bone. That's called cremation. I shouldn't be picking on these guys anyway. We came here to roast Dad. Most of these guys paid for the cab ride up here with a stagecoach ticket. So where do I start tonight? What can you say about a man who's admired, revered, and loved by everyone? I can start by saying he's not the guy we're roasting tonight.
There you go. Let that go. Now keep it going.
Just to inform everyone why I needed a resume. This afternoon, he wanted to edit my proof of what I was going to say tonight. However, I wrote him a nice little father-son love letter, so he was not expecting this. You need to do this once in a while for him because he's always so afraid that nobody will remember him when he's gone. Well, gee, I can think of a lot of reasons he'll be remembered, but he wouldn't like any of them. You know, I'm joking because with most people, the left side of your brain does some things, the right side of your does some things, but with you, neither side seems to do so much. And I'm starting to think something that, you know, you always talk about how you're hard of hearing and everybody's stuff. I don't think those are hearing aids at all. I actually starting to think that there's some high-tech stopper device just to keep the hot air from escaping his brain. I mean, come on, guys. I work with my dad every day, and there's no middle ground with this guy. Either he's right, or you're wrong. Or it's not his fault. Or it's somebody else's fault, it's not his fault. But seeing my dad work his amazing magic in the place of business really is amazing. He can do 10 things at one time. Well, I mean to say, he's used to seeing 10 people do 10 things. From a desk, on the phone with Bob, trying to discuss where they're going to go play golf next. I mean, come on. I have never met a guy who could do so much work and never lift a finger except to call somebody else to do the work. I do want to kind of point out one thing, though. Rosette should be able to back me up on this one. He's not the kind of guy that takes work home with him. He's never takes work to the house. That's because we do all the work at the funeral home. And what was it, Alan, that said something about comedy? Have you really ever seen any? How many people have ever seen my dad's comedy act? Oh, that's good because I think that seeing this, you may be able to sell like 4 copies of that CD. Everybody needs a doorstop. Maybe you have never heard any of these comedy things because when they announce a show, we receive a number of congratulatory telegrams for this event, congratulating that they're not going to be there. I mean, as far as looks go, you're fine. Here's the thing, though. We got here tonight. I had several people ask me, "Do I do stand-up comedy?" I said, "No, I'm here to put the chairs up after y'all." This year he had a lot of accomplishments. One in particular that I was so proud of, he was proud of. He went around just telling everybody how proud of it he was. The Guinness Book of World Records actually is going to put him in there this year. It's really great. Everybody should know this. He's getting a record put in the record book for the most number of silent ovations in a year. Also, he does public speaking. You know, I didn't know if anybody know this. When he speaks, I imagine the speeches that he gives are like horns on a steer. A point here, a point there, with a lot of bull in between. You know, if you ever get in one of his meetings where he has to talk, I sit in there and all the time, this is how I look when he's talking. And he always looks at me and says, "Hey, you need to look at people when they're talking to you." In the back of my head, what I'm really thinking is that my feet have fallen asleep, and I envy them. Have you guys ever seen him outside of work without a suit on? I mean, seriously, Dad, you look like you just stepped out of a Richard Simmons workout video. And have you ever called him on the phone and heard how he answers the phone? I don't think he knows his middle name. I think when he was growing up, either his hearing aid didn't work in that part, but he always answers the phone as, "Hello, Danny Jefferson." I mean, come on, this guy's let down more people than Barack Obama. Well, I just wanted you to know that I love you, and I sat and thought about this for months, and I had like 16 more pages left, but I found out there were going to be clergy here, and I had to clean it up. Anyway, thanks, guys, and I love you, Dad.
I'll let you know, Steve. All those folks that raised their hand about eating at Fitz on Main, well, our desserts come from our next guest, Mr. Fag Nolan, the President and CEO of C&S Cafeteria. And they're great pies. Thanks for sharing with Fitz. Come on up, let's grill Danny.
Thank you.
First of all, John, a fossil? I'm a fossil. I raised my hand a minute ago. I'm the only one in this room that's actually seen Danny's act. I couldn't leave because he drove. Talk about a captive audience. Yeah. Okay. I'd like to answer a question right now that I'm sure is in a lot of your minds. At least 90% of you, when you looked at the program tonight, this came into your head. And the answer is yes. My parents did name me Fag. It's a family name, goes back to several generations. The firstborn has to carry the name. True story. Ann and I got married, and of course, I'm the first one to have a girl as the firstborn. So with Ann, my wife, and myself, we came up with a name to suit both families. And we named our daughter Faggoty Ann. Pretty cool, what's that? You should have seen the lady at the hospital. It's probably going to stop with her because Faggoty doesn't get out a lot. But anyway, just thought you'd like to know where that came from. When Danny called me tonight about what was going on, I kept thinking, what in the world? Why would anybody call Danny Jefferson to do anything? much less a roast or try to make money or whatever. And I got to thinking about it. I said, well, yeah, back in the old days, they used to tar and feather and run you out on a rail. But now in polite society, they call it a roast. So take a hint, Jefferson. He asked me to talk about him for about 5 minutes, which you're not doing a real good job with that horn. I got to think about it. If you paid me, I couldn't talk about you. I couldn't come up with anything. So what I'm going to do is tell you a true story. And those of you who are old enough to remember this, the names have not been changed to protect the innocent. I've known Danny for about 20 years. I met him at a social event. I knew he was desperate for friends. You could look at him and tell he was desperate. He came walking up, shook my hand. He says, "Hi, I'm Danny. I'm a stand-up comedian and a mortician." And I just kind of looked at him, shook his hand, and said, "I'm Fag." And Danny stopped and said, he goes, this one I knew he couldn't hear. He goes, "I don't care."
Oh, that's good. That's good. Oh, boy.
Later on, he talked me into playing a little golf with him, which is probably a mistake. But anyway, and we had some good rounds and some bad rounds. But he called me one day and he said, "Do you think you could get 2 of your friends to come with me? I have won an all expense-paid golf outing to a resort in Myrtle Beach." And most of my friends that knew Danny, it was going to be a sell job, but I went and talked to them, came up with 2. They said, "Well, free golf, we'll go. Only if you'll stay in the cart with Danny for the entire weekend." So they agreed and off we went. The next Friday, we got in the car and we started heading toward, what was the name of the place? Sea Breeze Beach Resort on the beach. So, it's going to be a classy place. I smelled a rat when Danny let me drive because really and truly that's not something he lets you do. 2 of my friends in the back drinking beer that they bought for our free weekend. Raining cats and dogs. Couldn't see your hand in front of you. And this is 20-some years ago. And all Danny did was that thing he does or used to do in the front seat. He just kept doing that the whole time down. You don't do that anymore. 7 hours in the rain, 5 bathroom stops, and we made it. There was a sign that said Seabreeze Ocean Resort, and the sign just had vacancy on it. It didn't have no, it just had vacancies. So that kind of bothered me a little bit, the fact that we weren't in it. Also had a little sign that said office and a little arrow pointing down. Now, I don't go to a lot of resorts. I've been to a few. But I've never been to one that had a little arrow that said office. So we probably knew we were in trouble then, too. We walked in the office, and the clerk looked at us, and he didn't have a clue. This is a true story, what Danny was talking about. Danny pulls out this letter, and he says, look, I won this. We getting a free golf weekend. Here it is. And the guy looked at it. He said, yeah, I remember when we gave those out. We didn't think anybody would actually use them. He scratched his head. He says, you know, I guess we can help you out. He said, we got a suite across the street at the Seabreeze Annex. And it's, you know, we'll be glad to give you that. As far as golf, he gave us 4 rounds on Saturday, 4 rounds on Sunday to putt-putt wacky golf. with 8 coupons for the snack bar. The guy felt sorry for us, the look on our face, and he gave us 8 bumper boat passes. And off we went. We voted, we sat down and talked about it, we voted, we said, you know, we are going to stay here. I mean, it's a suite, right, guys? We'll stay in the suite, we'll call tomorrow, make our own tea times, things happen. So then the clerk asked us for a $5 deposit for the key, which, you know, that's a classy place. Each. And he sent us across the street. Went out to the car across the street. Danny pointed over and he says, look guys, there's a swimming pool, there's a diving board. You can see the handrail. This is going to get better. So we all kind of relaxed and said, yeah, maybe this isn't going to be too bad. So we pull into the annex, look over at the pool. The only water was in there was water that had come in the rain. It was enough to float the algae, a bunch of beer cans, 2 bottles, an old swimming and dead seagulls. It was nasty. It was rough. Danny at that point wasn't looking at us. He wasn't acknowledging us. We just kept going. The funny thing is, it didn't faze any of us because we couldn't wait to see what was going to happen next. And again, guys, this is a true story. We pushed the door open to Suite 2A. The A stood for Annex. And we walked into this luxurious 25 by 25 cinder block wall, linoleum floor, high-grade linoleum floor. Room with a yellow light bulb in the middle of the ceiling. A TV with an antenna. And I guess, John, you don't remember those, do you? Had a bathroom door. We had a 3x3 shower, metal, hot and cold water. We had 4 towels, 2 blue ones, 1 off-white, one of them was green, right? Had 1 washcloth and an almost new bar of soap because you could still read Ivory soap on the front of it. We had 4 beds lined up like, you know, Goldilocks. They're all in a little row. And it was bad. We had a table, 2 chairs, a hot plate, a sink, and an empty cooler. Didn't even get a refrigerator, just got an empty cooler. And we had 1 pot with a vice grip for a handle. Well, I made that up, but it wasn't quite that bad. So, we all sat there and stared at Danny for about, we didn't say a word, just stared at him for about 3 minutes. Danny reached up, pulled the string, turned off the lights, out we went. It was time to check out. Danny went into the office to get our $20 back for our deposit. Came back, gave everybody back their $5. They were in loose quarters. Then we found the motel and checked in. So, just to let you know, this is my first adventure with Danny. It was my all-expense-paid trip. Cost me $700. Cost me $60 in gas. 2 of my dearest friends that have never talked to me since. And then 24 years later, you call out of the blue and say, hey, Fag, this is Danny. I got out of the program now, like I'm supposed to know what that means. Right? And I'm living in Kernersville. And I am a, what's the word you said? A local notable. And I need you to come and roast me. So, not knowing exactly what was going on, and knowing that Danny sometimes set me up, I agreed to come. Well, I'm glad I did, because this is a great cause, and it is a lot of fun being here. And Danny, for once, you came through. Now, I do have one thing I want to present. Now, when I say set up, Danny told me this was a covered dish.
Hey, I need that.
Not that he'd do anything like that to anybody at all. So I got to thinking about it. By the way, this came from J&S, which is only a 15-minute drive down 40. Take a right on 68 on the left. Anyway, I'm going to give this to you, Rosette, because I understand women who are totally frustrated and eat chocolate. So this is yours again, guys. Thank you.
$20,000 to his name. After paying all the funeral expenses, she told her closest friend that there was no more money left at all. Her friend asked, "How can that be? You told me you had $20,000 just a few days before he died. How could you be broke?" Well, I went to Danny Jefferson. No, that's not good. It was just too good, though. The widow replied, "Well, the funeral cost me $6,500, and of course I had to pay off the church for the organist, the preacher, and $500. Then I spent another $500 for the wake, the food, the drinks, you know. The rest was for the memorial stone." "The memorial stone?" the friend asked. $12,500 for a memorial stone? My God, how big was it? The widow replied, 3 carats. Last but not least, our roaster tonight, Mr. Dick Harlow, Vice President, Clear Channel Communications from Raleigh. Dick.
I don't know if you noticed, but I was sitting right there, and I had to leave because it wasn't the psyllium husk. But being the last roaster, everything I was going to talk about has been used. So I had to go out to the car and get set number 2. Oh, here's some other notes. I can steal from the bag again. I'm going to keep that.
No, you're not.
I'm not from around here. My name is Dick Harlow. I live in Cary, North Carolina. I work in Raleigh. I met Danny 29 years ago. And 29 years ago, I was running WMAG 99.5 here in High Point, and we had a salesperson working for us named Kathy, who came to a company function one day and brought her date with her. And this guy walks up and says, "I'm Danny Jefferson." And I said, "Nice to meet you." And he came up to me right away and started assuming things. He assumed that we're going to be friends.
Oh, this is good.
Within the first 5 minutes of knowing him, I think he'd done some research about me with Kathy, so within the first 5 minutes of knowing him, he said, "Oh, when are we going to be able to play golf?" And then he said, "I think I can beat you in golf." And since I didn't say right away, "Well, we'll play really soon," he kept pushing that. And every time I was around him, he was assuming we were going to do more and more things together. Well, time passed a little while, and Danny was working in the funeral business at the time in Greensboro. And he calls one day and says, "I want to come see you." I said, "I'm fine, I'm not sick." He said, "I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you in private." I said, "All right, we'll play golf." And he comes in and he says, "I've decided I'm changing jobs, changing careers." And he says, I'm going to get into your business." I said, "Oh, that's a great idea." He said, "Kathy does really well." By this time he'd married Kathy. He says, "Kathy does really well." And what he was saying was, if she could do well at this, I could do really well at this. He said, "So I'm going to get in this business." He said, "So you need to hire me, or I'm going to go work for Ryder Stockton."
And I said, Danny, we don't hire married people. We don't hire people that are married to each other. He said, don't worry about it.
That was a good one. Oh, boy.
He said, I don't talk to her much during the day anyway. So he sold me on hiring him, and I hired him, and we put a rule in place. We said, well, your wife works for WMAG. You have to work for WMFR. That was back in the day when we only owned 1 or 2 radio stations at a time. And I said, you'll be in one set of the offices, she'll be in another, and you'll go your separate ways. She calls on people in Winston-Salem, you call on people in High Point. He started calling on people in High Point. And he called on everybody in High Point. And he started assuming that everybody would buy advertising from him. And you know what? In months, he went from burying people to making a bunch of money selling advertising because of this assuming mentality he had. And eventually, he grew up, as Fag and others have noted, out in the country here in Burlington. But our morning man on WMFR was Max Meeks. He was the mayor of High Point, and Danny became the assistant mayor in the first year he was working. Time went by, and things changed, and Danny wasn't married to Kathy anymore. As more time went by, and things changed, and I wasn't married. Never married to Kathy, but wasn't married anymore. And I had been transferred to our Charlotte radio stations. So I'm newly single and living in Charlotte, living in corporate housing in Charlotte at this time. And Danny and I reconnected, and he says, hey, I'm working for a publishing company. And he says, and I said, where are you? He says, I'm in Charlotte. I said, so am I. That's exactly right. And I said, my ex-wife and I are ex-wife and I now. And he said, let's have a drink. So Danny and I started seeing each other more regularly in those single days. And it was really, really good for me because Danny's a very good-looking guy. Danny walks into a room, and I don't understand it because I'm not a woman. But a lot of times, Danny walks into a room, and women go, wow, that's an attractive guy. So I was kind of like his wingman. And I'm not any good at casual conversation with women that I don't know. He's incredible at it. and we'd be out, and the next, I'd go to the restroom or just come back to where we were, and he's talking to people. And he'd be talking to people for like 5 minutes. And he knew everything about them. I'd come back from wherever I was, and they'd go, you know Danny? I said, I'm here. And I don't know if you know this, but Danny's deaf. You can't hear him. A lot of people would consider that a handicap. In the single dating world, that's not a handicap. Because a man is the best lip reader you've ever been around. And we would be somewhere, and he would see some ladies talking across the way, and he'd know that they were talking about him, and he'd use that information to go up and say hello. And then in an effort to help me one day, we're in a Marriott bar outside of Charlotte after playing golf. We still got on golf clothes. Thought we looked quite studly. And these women are sitting across the bar from us, and they're talking, and he says to me, the lady in the blue blouse just said something about the cute guy with the white hair. I said, what? He said, the woman in the blue blouse just said something about the cute guy in the white hair. I said, oh, really? He said, you ought to go say hello. I said, no, I'm not good at that. He said, they're talking. Go over there. Go over there. I have another sip. I go over there. Hey, how you doing? She looks at me like I'm crazy. And I said, what's your name? She says, why? And I said, I just like to say hello. Well, hello. I said, oh, okay, well, bye. I go back over to him and I said, what did she say? He said, couldn't see her lips, I don't know.
That's a good story. Oh man, that's good. That's good.
I'm from a large family.
Do that.
I'm the oldest of 8 children. And the 8 of us are Dick, Pat, Kate, Dan, Charlie, Tim, Tom, Frank. And I have a brother named Dan, who's 1, 2, 3, 4, number 4. We called him Danny also. And coming from a large family, it was a large Irish Catholic family. I had a great family upbringing. And because of that, I have a great bond with all of my brothers. I have 7 brothers and 1 sister. And we could go for long periods of time without seeing each other. And then when we would see each other, it would be like we talked to each other yesterday. And that's exactly the same kind of relationship I have with Danny. Danny and I have, as I said, known each other for 29 years. We've worked together, we've played together, we've had great fun together, we've had great sadness together. He's been a very dear friend. And in January of 1993, my brother Charlie died after a 5-year battle with cancer. And one of the first phone calls I got was from Danny. And that phone call, I remember it like it was yesterday. That phone call was the most comforting phone call I have ever gotten. And when I hung up that phone after talking to him, I said to myself, his vocation is showing. He was back in the funeral business again. He'd gone from the funeral business, the radio business, the publishing business, the pre-need business, and now he was back in the funeral business. And I said, that's really where he needs to be. To give you an example of the type of friendship that we have, one year at Christmas time, I'm from the Washington, D.C. area. We all go home to Mom at Christmas time. So we were leaving to go to Christmas Eve celebration at my mother's house in D.C. All of us gathered in Greensboro. My brother Frank from Charlotte, his wife, my 3 kids. We get in my Ford conversion van, and we're going to head up the interstate to go for Christmas. And we get as far, we lived right near Friendly Shopping Center in Greensboro. We get as far as I-40 at the Curry Convention Center, and my youngest son is in the back seat. He says to me, Dad, you see all this smoke coming out of the back of the car? I said, no. He said, there's a lot of smoke coming out of the back of this car. So we pulled over, popped the hood, it's smoking like crazy, and we go, we can't take this car to D.C. And we got too many people we got to do something. Without even thinking, I picked up my cell phone, and as I'm dialing the number, my wife says, who are you calling? And I said, Danny. She said, oh, okay. Got him on the phone. I said, hey man, where are you? He says, I'm at my house. And I said, well, we're here. Here's what's happened. He said, I'll be right there. 10 minutes later, he's there with his car. Says, take my keys. Take this car back to your house. Get your other cars. I'll sit here. Well, when you come back, we'll load your cars up. I won't actually pick things up and load them for you, he said. But we'll get you off and you can drive your other cars up there. Which we did. We brought our cars over, loaded them up, drove away. He sat on the side of the highway. This was Christmas Eve, about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. He sat on the side of the highway for about an hour and a half, waiting for the wrecker to come tow my car away. That's the kind, if you're looking for the kinds of friends you want to have, that's the kind of friends you want to have. In 1998, my father passed away. Here again, one of the first phone calls I got was from Danny Jefferson. Here again, that phone call was the kind of phone call that when it was over, I said to myself, the man's vocation is showing. That's exactly what he's supposed to be doing. I spoke at my father's funeral, and one of the first faces I saw, and the funeral was up in the Washington, D.C. area, one of the first faces I saw at the funeral was his. And to me, that's the kind of friend that Danny Jefferson is, and that's the kind of friend that everybody wants to have. I got transferred to Kansas several years ago. If anybody ever asks you, do you want to be transferred to Kansas? Tell them no. It's not a great place to live. Midwestern people are nice people, but it's not a great place to live. Danny visited us on many occasions at the time. I was remarried, Danny was not. And my wife fashioned herself as quite the fix-up person. Oh, Danny's coming out. She's going to meet so-and-so, so-and-so. And we did that on several occasions, but Danny became noted for coming back to Greensboro and telling people, I visited Dick and Susan in Kansas. And they said, what's it like? And he says, well, it's a flat place. It's really, really flat. He said, it's the kind of place where your dog runs away from home, and 3 days later you can still see it running. Danny and I found ourselves in same cities on many occasions, and we found out I had to go to Atlanta for business once, and he had to go to Atlanta for business once at the same time, so we go together. And like everybody else said, he drove. And on the way back, my cell phone rang, and it was one of my staff members at the radio. At that time, I was running a radio station in Greensboro. Was telling me that one of our employees' husbands passed away the night before. And she said, where do we find Danny? And I said, I didn't want to say, he sat right next to me. I said, we'll have him call in just a minute. And so I got the phone number, said to Danny, so-and-so's husband passed away, she needs you to give him a call. He picked up the phone in the car, driving us up Interstate 85, and gets this lady on the phone and talks to her in an unbelievably compassionate way. And the night before, we were being crazy guys and having a wonderful time, and now we're in the car and he is doing his profession. And when he finished talking to this lady, I said to myself, his vocation is showing. He's doing exactly what he's supposed to do. So, Danny's a really good friend of mine. I think you can feel that from what I'm saying about him. And I think that Kernersville has been very good to Danny and Rosette. But I also think Danny and Rosette have been very good for Kernersville. You can roast them, you can make fun of them, you can tease them, you can do whatever you want to do. I want to leave you with this final thought. My mother gave birth to 8 children, so I have 7 brothers and sisters by birth. But my other brother from another mother is Danny Jefferson.
You knew I was going to get this mic eventually.
I'm timing you.
And that line from that movie, excuse me while I whip this out.
Blazing sound.
Now, we've had a lot of fun, and this is a lot of fun. It's nice to hear what these guys... Well, it's nice to hear, period. Thank you, Roger. But don't you hate two-faced people? Because you never know which side of their face to slap first. And as you saw all these roasters tonight, I mean, these are all my friends. It kind of makes me feel normal. And I'm not exactly sure about all my friends when the alcohol line was as long as it was tonight. But if I say anything that might offend you, please let me know and I'll say it again. But I had a couple of things that I wanted to say, and Fag and I had talked on numerous occasions, and I remember we were doing a Jazz on the Lawn together. And our secret code, just so you'll know, for he and I, his name is Benny. When people don't know that I'm calling him Hey Fag for any particular reason. We're in a crowd of people. We're cooking hamburgers. J&S is doing all the food and ice cream, and we're missing tongs, and he goes back to the truck to get them. Now, you got to keep in mind, this is 900 people. And it is crowded. And he goes running back to the truck to get the tongs, and I find them, I see them, so I, out of just sheer reflex, go, Hey, Fag! And 9 people turned around and weren't talking to me. And just to show you what kind of friend Faye, would you stand up, please? Stand up, Faye. I want to answer. If any of you remember K&W Cafeteria in Grady Allred, who started K&W, Faye's wife, Ann, is Grady's daughter. Ann, would you stand up, please? Now, isn't that a pair? Well, one of the words that you never got to hear in life is please duck. He told me one time that onions are the only fruit or anything that will make you cry. That was right before I hit him in the face with a watermelon. They say some people aren't just missing a screw, but my friends are all missing a whole toolbox. But after looking at that line out there, my friends drink on 2 occasions, my birthday and when it's not. They say pain makes you stronger, tears make you braver, and heartbreak makes you wiser. Vodka makes you not remember any of them at all. But anyway, I had all these things, and I was going to say certain things about certain people. And Alan Bennett, the one guy that can turn any situation into a courtroom drama, reality TV. The commissioner himself. We're very, very close in age. We're very, very much alike. We buy the same clothes. And by the way, if you don't notice this on a regular basis, between Alan and Bob Reed and myself, we always kind of, and we're not ladies, don't go anywhere with this, but we actually sometimes call each other to find out what you're wearing because we don't want to be wearing the same thing. What are you talking about, Rick Potter? And my son, what can I say? A legend in his own mind. But you did a great job tonight. I was absolutely honored to hear that. I was glad to see that, and it was one of those things that as a dad, you made me proud, and I appreciate it. I really do. It's just that, the problem in this world is that there are intelligent people full of doubt and stupid people who are full of confidence. And Mr. Reed, what can I say about Bob Reed? He never met a hand sanitizer he didn't like. It's on the table. I actually bought those things and put them in the right corner of the passenger side because he never drives. The passenger side of my car, so he'd have them.
Thank you, Dan.
And I put some in the back for Marie when she goes. And Dick Colo, who he was talking about all the times and the fun and everything that we had, and it was always nice to have him around. Because on so many occasions, everybody thought he was my dad. Carenet counseling is why we're here. Occasionally, I think that my friends need some of this psychic counseling. Psychiatric counseling, if you will. As soon as I said that, my son was on me about it. And see, what he doesn't understand is he thinks these are hearing aids. They're actually telecommunicators. The other day we were doing something and he goes, "How did you know I was thinking that?" He still hasn't figured it out. Carenet Counseling does a wonderful job. Dr. Horn and all of the group there at Wake Forest Baptist Health, I'll get the new name right eventually. It's just nice to have the people in town. If you didn't notice one thing about the video that we were watching, is last year $100,000 in services were given to people that couldn't afford it. That's why you're here tonight. And I hope that was why you're here, not just me. Because next year we'd like for you to be back here again, whoever they decide to roast.
But that's why you're here. That's why I do it. I really do. And I look at all the faces here tonight, and I'm excited to see you here. I'm honored. I'm actually honored. Thank you.
Danny Jefferson, a man for all seasons and for all the right reasons. You have cast a shadow in this community through your leadership at the Chamber, all the organizations, Downtown Preservation Council, Kernersville. The fiber and the soul of a man, beyond your leadership and giving back to the community, is what you shared with your family when your sister was going through her final days. And if all of us can take a lesson in life, you gave it to us. And the love and the compassion and the time that you gave her during her final days. Thanks for sharing that gift with us. Pastor Jeff, if you'll close, please, with the benediction.
Thank you, Danny, for allowing us to do this. I do want to clarify that there's no psychic counseling happening in Main Street. I say that for the sake of John Owensby, who's at my table. He was our newspaper editor here in Kernersville. I'm sure he'll get that right. Thank you for coming. By your presence here tonight, you are helping us to guarantee that high-quality psychological counseling, high-quality mental health care is available to anybody in this community, regardless of their ability to pay. And I commend you for helping us to do that. One thing I want to do before we leave, I want all of the people, I don't know how many is here, but I know there's a few. I want all the people who volunteer as greeters at the Carenet Center, and Scott Dunn, who is our greeter coordinator. Would you stand? So Scott is always looking for people in the community to serve as greeters there at the Carenet Center, and you can see Scott before you leave if you would like to offer a couple hours each week. Let's pray together. God of great love and great grace, we give you thanks for this night. We give you thanks for the healing work of Carenet Ministry, and we give you thanks that we can be part of that healing work here in this world. As we go forth into the world now, we pray that we will be able to help mend the world with the grace and the love that you've shown us as we share it. Send us forth now into the world. We know that the laughter has enriched us. May we enrich the people's lives that we encounter this night and the days to come. Amen.
That's it, folks.